Hello, students. In a previous class, we uh, we have completed the civics lesson. Now, as I had already informed you that in this class we are going to start with history. So, in history, last lesson we have done is lesson number 3, the Delhi Sultans, in which we have seen that the Delhi Sultans were the rulers who sat on the throne of Delhi. And in this, we have read about the various dynasties, the rulers of Delhi who sat on the throne. That is slave dynasty, Khilji, Tughlaq, Sayyid, and lastly, we have seen about the Lodi dynasty. Now, in this lesson number 4, we are going to start it today. That is the Mughal Empire. After the Delhi Sultans, Mughal rule was there, and in this we see that the ruling as a large territory as an Indian subcontinent with such a diversity of people and cultures was in very extremely difficult, very difficult task for any ruler to accomplish in the Middle Ages. That means in the Middle Ages to rule such a large territory was very difficult for the Indian rulers. And on other hand, if we say that the preceders, the Mughal created an empire and accomplished what had hitherto seemed possible for only short period of time. But in contrast, in difference with this Middle Ages, when Mughals came, now Mughal created an empire which had accomplished the at least rule possible for a short period of time. And after later half of the 16th century, these Mughals have expanded their kingdom from Agra and Delhi until in the 17th century they controlled nearly all the subcontinent. That means till the 17th century these Mughals had controlled nearly all of the subcontinent, that is Indian subcontinent. Now, they imposed structures of administration and ideas of governance that outlasted their rule, leaving a political legacy that succeeding rulers of the subcontinent could not ignore. That means those who the rulers of the Mughal Empire who succeeded one ruler after other, they cannot ignore the thing the truth that these Mughal rulers had left the political legacy. Political legacy means the political inheritance of such a vast territories plus a good administration, governance. All these things were left over by the Mughals for their succeeding rulers. And today, as we see that the Prime Minister of India addresses the nation on Independence Day from the rampart of Red Fort in Delhi and the residence, which was the residence of Mughal emperors. So here we have seen that today Prime Minister addresses or gives message to the whole nation on Independence Day, and he gives the message to the people from the ramparts of the Red Fort in Delhi. Ramparts means it is a defensive wall of Red Fort in Delhi, which was earlier the residence of Mughal emperors. That means earlier, previously, Mughal emperors used to live in Red Fort. So all this shows that uh, previously it was not a easy task that they can handle such a vast territory, but slowly Mughal had succeeded, have became completely successful in giving a good administration, a good governance, a good political legacy for their successors to rule over. Now, coming to the next topic, that is who were the Mughals. Now, this question arises, who were the Mughals? Now, here we see that Mughals were the descendants of two great lineages of rulers. Now, two great lineages, here lineages means two great ancestors. Now, Mughal were the descendants. They came from the two great rulers. Now, from the mother side, they were descendants of Changiz Khan. Now, Changiz Khan, who died in 1227, and he was the ruler of Mongol tribe who ruled China and Central Asia. So, the first lineage, the first ancestral source of Mughal from where they came is from the mother side, Changiz Khan. And who was Genghis Khan? Genghis Khan was the Mongol ruler of Mongol tribe and ruled China and Central Asia. Now, next great lineage is from the father side of Mughals. Now, their father belonged to the successor of the Tamur. He was the from the side of the father. They were the successors. Mughals were the successors of Temur, who died in 1404. And the ruler of this Tamur was the ruler of Iran, Iraq, and modern day we can call that Turkey. So these are the two great lineage. One from the mother side, they belong to Genghis Khan. Another from the Tamur side, from the father side, they belong to Tamur. However, the Mughals did not like to be called Mughal or Mongol. Now, another case we see that Mughals, though they had two great lineages, but they never liked themselves to be called from the mother side, that is from Genghis Khan or descendants. They never liked to be called themselves the descendants of Genghis Khan or from as a Mongol. Why? The great reason is there behind that. That this is because Genghis Khan's memory was associated with massacre. Massacre means great mass of killing people, innocent people. So Genghis Khan was, as such, can say, not a good person. He was an invader, and according to the Mughals, they did not want to belong from those descendants who in the past had made a large killing of innocent people. And this Genghis Khan was also had a link with the Uzbek. And who were Uzbeks? Uzbeks were also the Mongol competitors. They were competitors of Genghis Khan. So this is the main reason why Mughals did not want themselves to be called by the descendants of Genghis Khan or from the mother side. Now, on the other hand, Mughals were proud of their Timurid ancestry. Means now on the other side, they want themselves to be called from their father's side, that is from the Tamur. Why? Another reason is there for why they want themselves to be the descendant of Tamur, because their great ancestor, that is Tamur, had captured Delhi in 1398. So, two different reasons are there why they did not want themselves to be called the descendants of Genghis Khan, because Genghis Khan memories, the uh, working of Genghis Khan, the works of Genghis Khan were not good. He has made a great massacre, great slaughtering of innocent people. That is which Mughals did not like to be called by their Mughals, Mongols, whereas they uh, prefer to be called themselves as the descendants of Tamur because of the good memory that Tamur has captured Delhi in 1398. So this was the major reason of who were Mongols. They were descendants from the mother side. They were descendants of Genghis Khan. From father side, they were descendants of Tamur, but they did not wanted themselves to be called as Mongol because of the bad, we can say, impression of Genghis Khan, whereas they wanted themselves to be called by the descendants of Tamurid, that is descendants of Temur. Now they celebrated their genealogy pictorially, each ruler getting a picture made of Temur and himself. That means uh, each Mughal ruler wanted himself to be getting pictured with the Temur. And the figure shows like this only. This is the figure shown. Now this is a miniature painting, and it was made in 1702 to 1712 between this of Temur and his descendants and the Mughal emperors. Now Temur is sitting in the center, and his descendants and the Mughal emperors are here. Damour is in the center, and on his right side is his son Miran Shah, the first Mughal emperor. Now, as Tamur is sitting in the center, now on the right side, as the right side of Tamur will be this, so the right side of this is his son sitting, and the son name is Miran Shah. And Miran Shah was the first Mughal emperor, Babur's great great grandfather. So, who was Miran Shah? Miran Shah was Babur's great great grandfather. And then Abu Said is sitting here next to Miran Shah. And who was this Abu Shahid? Abu Shahid was the Babur's grandfather. And now coming to the left, Tamur or Sultan Muhammad Mirza, that is Babur's great grandfather here, and Umar Sheikh, that is Babur's father. So this is the way they are sitting here, and they wanted themselves feel proud in having the picture with Tamur as an ancestor. Then after this, the Mughal emperors Babur, Akbar, and Shahjahan are the third, fourth, and fifth individual on the Taimur's right here. And then again in the left, it is same order are Humayun, Jahangir, and Aurangzeb. So this is the picture shown, miniature painting. This is shown here like this. Now we coming to the next topic of the same lesson, that is Mughal military campaigns. Mughal military campaigns means who Mughal were indulged in war and battle, and often succeeded in enlarging or expanding their empire. And this is the way they had started with that. Babur, the first Mughal emperor. Who was the first Mughal emperor? Babur, and his rule was from 1526 to 1530. He succeeded to the throne of Fargana in 1494. 1494, when he was only 12 years old, he sat on the throne of Fargana. But he was forced to leave his ancestral throne due to the invasion of another Mughal group, the Uzbeks. But due to another Mughal group, Uzbeks, he was forced to leave his ancestral throne. He was forced to leave his uh, parental throne. After years of wandering, means after leaving this throne of Fargana, he wandered. He moved from place to place, and finally he seized Kabul in 1504. He seized means he captured Kabul in 1504. And in 1526, he again defeated the Sultan of Delhi, Ibrahim Lodi. And who was the Sultan of Delhi at that time? Ibrahim Lodi, the last Sultan of Delhi, that is Lodi dynasty, and at Panipat, and captured Delhi and Agra. And finally, in 1526, Babur defeated Ibrahim Lodi at Panipat and captured Delhi and Agra. Now, the Afghans were the immediate threat to Mughal authority. Afghans were the immediate threat to Mughal authority. That means, as soon as Babur sat on the throne, the first and foremost fear for Babur or the Mughal authority was about Afghans. And then their relationship we will see about Mughals and Ahoms, then Sikh, Mewar and Marwar, and Humayun relationship. All these will be in the coming lessons. We are going to have the knowledge about all them. Then coming to the next, the table is given of the Mughal emperors, their major campaigns, their battles, their wars, and the events. First, we come to see that Babur, who ruled from 1526 to 1530, 1526, first of all, he defeated Ibrahim Lodi and his Afghan supporters at Panipat. Next, in 1527, again, he defeated Rana Sanga and Rajput rulers plus the supporters at Khanwa. Lastly, in 1528, he defeated the Rajput at Chanderi. So after Babur, Humayun's son sat on the throne. After Humayun, Akbar sat on the throne when he was only 13 years old and he became emperor. And his reign can be divided, his rule, Akbar's rule can be divided into three periods. Now, which three periods are there? First period is from 1556 to 1570 when Akbar became independent and independent of the regent Behram Khan and other members of his domestic staff. Second period is from 1570 to 1585. It is all about military campaigns in Gujarat and which were followed in the east in Bihar, Bengal, and Orissa. Next, the third period of Akbar is 1585 to 1605, and this is for the expansion of Akbar empire. After Akbar, Jahangir sat on the throne. His son then he sat on the throne on means the ruling period is 1605 to 1627. After Jahangir, Shahjahan, and after Shahjahan, Aurangzeb sat on the throne. So like this, all the Mughals sat one after the other on the throne of Delhi. Then here the map is given about the military campaigns under or Akbar and Aurangzeb. So which all territories were annexed under Mughal supremacy? It is all given here. Kabul, Kandahar, Chittor, Amber, Mathura. Slowly, slowly means we can say in this way that slowly, slowly the Mughals were expanding their empire day by day. Now, the Mughal traditions of the succession. Here, the Mughals did not believe in the rule of primogeniture. That means, what is the rule of primogeniture? Means where the eldest son inherited his father's estate. Means the Mughals did not believe that only the eldest son will get the inheritance in the father estate. Means had the only uh, part in the father's whatever father is having, whether he's having the territories, whatever territories he is having, or any inheritance he is having, only the eldest son will be having that after the father dies. This was not believed by the Mughals. Instead, they followed that the Mughal and Timurid custom of corpora canary inheritance. Corpora canary inheritance means the division of the inheritance among all the sons. That means all the sons will get equal share in all the property of their father, whether there is throne or anything else. So this was the tradition of the succession. That means not only the eldest son will have the share in the father's property, but all the sons of that ruler will have the equal share. Next, Mughal relations with other rulers. Now, Mughal relations with other rulers means uh, the Mughal rulers campaigned constantly against rulers who refused to accept their authority. That means uh, day, uh, day by day, Mughals were extending their territories, and whosoever refused to accept the authority of Mughals, they were defeated in the war, or battle was fought against them, and then they were asked to uh, ask for the to accept the supremacy of the Mughals. But as the Mughals become powerful, many other rulers also joined them voluntarily. But day by day, as other rulers were observing that Mughals were becoming powerful, so they by choice only, their own choice, voluntary, they were accepting the Mughals' authority. Now, the Rajput are the good example of this. Rajputs are the good example of this Mughal authority. Many of them married their daughters into Mughal families and received high positions, but many resisted it as well. That means many Rajput rulers married their daughters to the Mughal families, and they had received high positions for that. But uh, many Rajput have refused also to have the supremacy, to accept the supremacy of Mughals. Now, the Rajput who had the example of the Rajput who had accepted the supremacy of Mughals by marrying their daughters to the Mughal families are example is given here. The mother of Jahangir was Kachawa princess, and who was Kachawa princess? The daughter of Rajput ruler Amber, and modern day Jaipur was called as Amber in the earlier years. The second example is given that the mother of Shahjahan was also a Rathore princess and who was the daughter of Rajput ruler of Marwar. Previously, it was called as Marwar, and today you know by the name of Jodhpur. So, Jodhpur today was previously called as Marwar, and Jaipur today was previously called as Amber. So, these two are the good examples where the Rajput rulers had married their daughters to the Mughal families and got the high position in Mughal administration. But as we see that all the Rajput rulers did not accept it easily the supremacy of Mughal rulers. Among that was one of the Rajput ruler was the Sisodia Rajputs. They refused to accept the authority of Rajputs for the long time. But once defeated, however, they were treated by the Mughals, giving their lands Watan back as assignments of Watan or Jagir. Now, Sisodia Rajput did not accepted Mughal supremacy for a long time, but then they were finally defeated by the Mughals. But though they were defeated by the Mughals, but then also they were treated very respectfully with great honor by the Mughals, and for that the Mughals had given their lands back to them as assignments, or we can say as Watan or Jagir to them. The careful balance between defeating but not humiliating influence their opponents enabled the Mughal to extend their influence over many kings and chieftains. That means this deeds of Mughal by not humiliating, by not giving the harsh treatment to the other side of the people, means other side of the rulers. The Mughals had influence, had great impact on the minds of other kings and chieftains because the Mughals were not humiliating. On the other hand, they were just uh, seeing with respect to those rulers who were accepting this their supremacy. But this was difficult for the Mughals to keep this balance all the time, to give respect to all the rulers all the time. Next, we come about Mansabdars and Jagirs, Jagirdars. Now, as the empire expanded to encompass different regions, the Mughals recruited diverse bodies of people. That means now the day by day empire was extending, the territories were extending of the Mughals, and so it became necessary to recruit means to appoint new people, new bodies of people, so that they can have the proper maintenance in the administration uh, from the small nucleus of Turkish nobles. Now, previously they were just a small unit. These Mughals were the small unit of Turkish nobles that was called as Turanis. Now they had expanded to include Iranians, Indian Muslims, Afghans, Rajput, Marathas, and other groups. Now Mughal had included had given the appointment to Iranians also, Indians also, Muslims, Afghans, and all these peoples were now included to help the successful working of the Mughal administration. And then those who joined Mughal services were enrolled as Mansabdars. They were given rank as Mansabdars. Those who joined the Mughal services. Now, the term Mansabdar refers to an individual who holds a mansab. Now, what does the term mansabdar here refers to? Mansabdar means an individual who holds a mansab. And now, what is a mansab? Mansab means a position or rank. So, whatever the position or rank a particular uh, individual was holding, he was called as mansabdar for the Mughal administration. Now it was grading system used by the Mughals. This Mansabdari was the grading system for the Mughals. It was uh, in this the rank was fixed. The position rank means the position of that Mansabdar. That individual was fixed in the administration, Mughal administration. The salary was also fixed. Plus, some military responsibilities were also assigned to these Mansabdars. Now, rank and salary were determined by the numerical value called Zat. So, now what was Zat? Zat was the numerical value which was determined for the rank or salary, and that was called as Zat. The higher the Zat, the more prestigious was the noble's position in the court and larger his salary. That means if the Zat, the numerical value for that particular rank or the salary was more, that means that individual was having a high position. If higher value, numerical value, that means higher position of that particular individual was there in Mughal administration. Now, the Mansabdar's military responsibility was also there. In this, uh, they were responsible to maintain the specific number of sawar. That means a cavalryman. Those men who were on the horseback. So the Mansabdar had the duty, had the responsibility to have the specified special number of sawars for the war, for the battle in the administration, Mughal administration. And the Mansabdar brought these cavalrymen for review, got them registered, their horses branded, and then received money to pay them as salary. So these were the work of Mansabdars who were indulged in the military responsibility, who was given the military responsibility in the Mughal administration. They had to keep a specific number of sawar, the number of horsemen with them, plus they had to register all those cavalrymen, all those men who were on the horseback, plus they had to brand all the horses also which were used for the Mughal army. And then they also received, these mansabdars also received money to pay them as salary. Now today I end here only. uh, In the next class, we will continue with the same lesson, and whatever I have marked here in the book with the highlighter, please underline in the book also, so that you can go through them and in a short. Thank you.